Hey healthy humans, today I'm showing you the pelvic position, how to hold neutral pelvis when you come into chair pose. Now this is a question I get a lot, and it's something I see a lot being done incorrectly. And if it's done incorrectly, you can end up leaving your yoga class or leaving your yoga practice and going, gosh, my low back really hurts and I don't know why, but I'll show you why. So here's our pelvis right here. Okay, so we've got these two bones, the ilium, we have our pubic bone back here and the sacrum back here. Now what we want in neutral pelvis is our pubic bone, which is down here, and the hip points, which are the ASIS, the anterior superior iliac spine right here, to be in one flat triangle, one plane. Now it doesn't matter, fat, belly, whatever is here doesn't matter. You're feeling for the bones. So how can I keep them here? Now, most of us, you will see a little bit of a curve right here. It's the natural curve of your low back. But let me show you what happens when we go to chair pose. So if I can hold neutral here, it's in a flat plane. I'm going to be engaging my glutes just a little bit because I tend to do this. I have an anterior tilt to the pelvis. The bowl of my pelvis tips forward and my butt sticks back. And this is something that I realized I developed when I was much younger because I didn't want my inner thighs to brush up against each other as I walked. And I hated getting shorts or anything caught in the inner thighs, skirts, anything like that. It would irritate me. And it was really, so what I did, I realized this in my 40s, is I was doing this so that my inner thighs wouldn't touch. And look how skinny my legs look when I stick my butt back. So what that does is it gives us a lot of pain. Anyone that wears high heels also is going to naturally have this anterior tilt. Anyone that's pregnant, naturally you'll get the anterior tilt because, right, we've got all this weight in the front of the body. But what it does is it weakens the core and it really puts a huge strain on the low back. So it's important that we know neutral pelvis and we hold it throughout our chair pose. So when I have neutral pelvis here, flat plane, I start to bend my knees to come down into chair pose, right? And you go, okay, can I keep this exactly the same as I bend my knees? In chair pose, your weight needs to be in your heels, not in the balls of your feet. So you're keeping it in the heels, that's to protect your knees. So you're paying attention. Do you start to arch your back? Because this is very common when we go to chair, but I'll show you why in just a second. So now our goal is to hold this in neutral as we lower down to the position of our chair, and that will depend on what's comfortable and what works for you. So as an Ashtangi, we would keep our legs together. We would come down low. We have the fingertips touch the floor. So that was kind of like what I was taught is your fingertips almost graze the floor as you come up into chair pose. What happens though, when we get too low and we raise our arms up high is this. So I bend, I lower, I bend, I lower, and I start to take my arms up high. My ribs pop forward and my butt pops back. So now I have this huge arch. What happens in this chair pose, if I'm doing chair pose here, whether the arms are shoulder distance or whether they're together, which you should only do if it works for your neck and shoulders. So this is Anjali Mudra, and it's not squishing, it's the fingertips pressed against each other, is because yoga is a prayer. It's a mindfulness movement. It's an offering. And in the sun salutations, it's offering, paying reference to the sun for giving us this life. So this is only for offering. You can do your offering with your heart. Your body might say, this is not good for me, especially if people have neck and shoulder things. They can stay wide, go ahead, they can be bent like that. Think of that as totally secondary. The arms going up does not matter. So I like to guide people to sit back into their chair, take your hands into your jean pockets, the imaginary jean pockets that we have, and smooth your buttock flesh toward the ground. Now we don't want to go too far. This is called a posterior tilt to the pelvis. It's the flat butt syndrome. That's a little too much. You're just going for neutral. So smooth it down until you feel like you're in a comfortable position. Belly is in. I like to have students start with their arms forward, take the shoulders back. Now this is the term I use a lot. It's called knitting the ribs. So here, the floating ribs, these ribs are just cartilage, connected to cartilage, okay? So I have to draw them in toward each other. If my ribs pop, if you can feel them here popping, your core is not active and it's too much strain on the low back. So I use this to draw them in toward each other. And you can also say, draw your ribs down toward your hips. That might work as well. Okay, so the shoulders come back, knit the ribs, and now hold your neutral pelvis as you start to take your arms up overhead. Now watch, the shoulders might want to go up. We have to keep our shoulders down. At some point, you'll get to some point where this is going to happen. You see that? So from here, if I try to take my arms overhead and I'm not paying attention, I'm pulling my chest forward. This is too much. Here. So this is your chair pose. Yoga is not about how the pose looks. It's not about, you know this. It's not about what it looks like on the outside. It's about how much are we paying attention on the inside. Am I mindful of what my body is doing? And often we move too quickly and we're not paying attention. And especially as a beginner or an advanced beginner. And an advanced beginner is someone that's been practicing for a bit, practicing consistently 3 to 4 times a week for maybe a year or two. And you're starting to master the poses. You're starting to really know the poses, to know the sequences that your teachers teach, and you're feeling really confident and capable. And this is an amazing stage to be in because it feels so good, right? To be practicing, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm finally getting it. And it takes a little bit of time, right? But what can happen is sometimes then we get, just like we always do in life, we get super excited, and then the mindfulness leaves a little bit because we kind of get confident and go, well, I know this, I know what the pose is, I know what a warrior two is, and I know what chair pose is, and we think that we know it. So one of the really important things with our yoga practice is to show up every time with a beginner's mind. And this is something we all struggle with. I've been practicing over 25 years and still showing up like, oh, I'm just learning my body. Hello, friend. How are you today? What's going on with you? What do I need to be aware of? What are the points of my body that I should be a little more, I want to just be observant of? Am I breathing throughout my whole practice? Am I able to maintain a steady breath, or have I lost my breath? Am I able to maintain the mindfulness? And when we first start practicing, the mindfulness might just be fleeting. It might come in and out, and your mind might still be needing to move. I needed to move. But we want to have the intention that our yoga practice is sacred time. It's time for us to get to know ourselves. And so it's not about how things look on the outside. It's about how it feels on the inside and what is a good, safe position. We've sort of moved away from the strict alignment, like Iyengar alignment type of principles, into having each person, which is beautiful because this is what we need, having every single person internalize the pose and go, what is it that my body needs today? But it really is, it takes a very unique and special and committed teacher to be able to encourage students to not let the mind stuff hold a student back. And I've been blessed to have some really amazing teachers that have gotten me to do things with my body that were beyond I could have never imagined. And there is a surrendering to it, but we want to do that safely. So chair pose, you got it, okay? Utkatasana, it's also called awkward pose or fierce pose. You do want to be fierce, and this is not fierce, right? We can all agree this is probably not fierce. So you watch out for this. Whether the feet are together, farther apart, more stable, together, less stable, more challenging. So find your neutral pelvis. Get really familiar right here. Pubic bone, hip bones. Take the heels of your hands, put them on the hip points. Take your middle finger, put it on the pubic bone, play around with it. Go, okay, posterior tilt. Okay, anterior tilt. Or you can go, okay, flat butt. Okay, too much arch. Flat, too much. Find neutral in the middle, and then find your chair with the arms forward. And then as you start to raise them, it's up really slowly because you're paying attention right here. Did my ribs pop? As soon as the ribs pop, you've lost the pose. You're out of the pose. You're not practicing yoga anymore, okay? So, because there's no mindfulness in it. The yoga is the mindfulness. It's that part of it, okay? So here, All right, great. I would love to know how this helps your yoga practice. I would love for everyone, every time you get on your mat, to leave going, oh my gosh, I learned something about myself, and I didn't hurt myself. I didn't cause any harm to myself because I was moving too quickly, or I was trying to do what the teacher was telling me and I didn't understand, or we miss it, you know? So anyway, this is the part of yoga that I love. It's this fine tuning stuff. So if you've got more poses that you're like, Melissa, I really want to learn this one, put it in the comments below. I would love to be able to support you in that. And thanks all so much for being here. Again, the Healthy Human Project, we're just changing ourselves in order to change the world. Okay, talk to you soon.